Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Let's just jump right in, because today we are looking at something every single one of us has stared at, probably with a little bit of heartbreak if we're being honest. Yep, our pay stubs. We all see those mandatory deductions taken out month after month, year after year. But what if I told you there's an invisible, multi-million-dollar fortune hiding right there in plain sight, buried inside those very deductions? Seriously. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of financial analysis titled In Search of Missing Fortunes.
So I really want you to ask yourself, where is your missing fortune? To answer that, we're going to explore a sort of parallel financial universe. This whole concept is based on an absolutely incredible 45-year spreadsheet thought experiment conducted by personal finance author Jerry Bourne. He and his wife Zena looked back at over 4 decades of working and paying into the system, and Jerry decided to actually crunch the numbers. He wanted to see what those lifelong deductions could have become under different circumstances.
Okay, so here's the core premise of Jerry's experiment. It asks one very simple yet totally mind-blowing question. What if the mandatory deductions taken from a couple's paychecks over their entire working lives, specifically Social Security and Medicare, were instead invested in just a basic, boring S&P 500 index fund? No fancy stock picking, no complex real estate deals, just regular, mandatory paycheck deductions steadily feeding into the overall stock market for 45 solid years.
Now, most of us usually just glance at the bottom line of our pay stubs, right? But let's break down what's actually leaving your paycheck, and crucially, what your employer is quietly paying on your behalf. You've got the 6.2% employee Social Security tax, but you also have a matching 6.2% paid by your employer. Then there's the 1.45% employee Medicare tax, matched again by a 1.45% employer Medicare tax. When you combine your contributions with that often forgotten employer match, a massive 15.3% of your compensation is going into these programs. That is a serious chunk of change.
Part 1. The Social Security Experiment.
For this first phase, the author reimagines that 12.4% combined Social Security tax functioning exactly like a personal IRA, just growing year after year. And this brilliantly illustrates the staggering power of compound interest. Just look at the 1970s for a second. His wife Zena made a tiny contribution of just $35 into the system. If that $35 had been placed in an S&P 500 index fund instead, it would have ballooned to over $7,000 today. I know, that sounds literally like magic, but it's just math. That growth represents a 12% annual return stretched out over a 47-year time horizon. It's not about huge sums of money. It's about giving small sums of money enough time to do the heavy lifting.
Which brings us to, well, this absolutely shocking number. When the author calculated his and his wife's lifetime Social Security contributions, invested them in this hypothetical S&P 500 model, and then doubled the balance to include their employer's matched contributions, the total came out to $2,121,756. Over $2 million. This is the combined hypothetical Social Security IRA total for a couple working normal jobs over a standard career. Part 2. The Medicare What If. So let's apply the exact same investment logic to the second half of the deduction equation. What if Medicare functioned like a tax-advantaged health savings account, or HSA, invested directly in the stock market? For this part, we're taking that 2.9% combined Medicare contribution. Remember, that's your 1.45% plus your employer's 1.45%, and treating it as if it were deposited into an HSA specifically earmarked for future medical expenses.
And dropping that 2.9% into our parallel financial universe gives us our second massive reveal, nearly $600,000. Just from those tiny single-digit percentage deductions, the couple would have accrued an HSA worth roughly $600,000. Think about that. That would be a designated war chest strictly for their future medical expenses in retirement.
The grand reveal.
When we add these two imaginary accounts together, $2.7 million. That is the staggering, eye-watering total generated simply from standard 15.3% payroll deductions steadily invested over a career. And nearly $3 million missing fortune. And the crazy part? It wasn't created by winning the lottery or founding a tech startup. It was made just by going to work, earning a paycheck, and having a percentage of it consistently exposed to market growth for 4 decades.
Now, let's take a breath here for a second, because this comparison impartially clarifies a very important reality. Government programs like Social Security and Medicare are designed as necessary foundational safety nets. They're social insurance programs meant to ensure basic survival and medical care for all citizens. They don't have provisions to pass wealth to your heirs.
Personal accounts like IRAs and HSAs, on the other hand, are entirely different animals. They're specifically designed for market growth and personal wealth building, and you can pass them down. They serve two totally different purposes in society. The government programs were never designed to make you a millionaire, and you know what? That's completely okay. So what's the actual real-world lesson we can extract from this? Well, the empowering takeaway from Gary Bourne's thought experiment isn't about what you're missing out on. It's about what you can actively build. If you want this exact kind of wealth, you have the blueprint right in front of you. You need consistent contributions. You need a total savings rate of about 15% of your paycheck. You need a long 40-year time horizon, think age 18 to 62, and you need a basic, boring S&P 500 index fund. If you personally commit to funding your own accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks, your HSAs, with that 15%, you can absolutely build this exact fortune yourself.
And honestly, this really hits the nail on the head regarding the author's core thesis, which is encapsulated in this famous quote, "Time in the market is more important than timing the market." Remember that $35 contribution in the 1970s? It didn't turn into $7,000 because of a perfectly timed trade. It turned into $7,000 because it just sat there for 47 years. Longevity, patience, and consistency, those are the true undisputed engines of massive compound interest.
Which leaves us with one final provocative question to wrap up our explainer today. Are you funding your own parallel financial universe? The math absolutely proves that a multi-million-dollar fortune is entirely possible on a normal salary, as long as you act like your own payroll department and consistently deduct that 15% for your own future. The missing fortune doesn't have to stay missing. The real question is, are you ready to take control of your financial destiny and start building it today?